Greetings of fortitude, excellence, and uprightness. Good day, everyone. So, we are the Group 4, and we're going to present issues on the use of drugs and related to AIDS. But before we start, let me introduce myself first. I'm John Vincent Idumlao, together with De La Vega Maria Micaela M., Del Santos Daniel Isabella M., Deloso Mary Ann C., Del Rosario Pamela Beyonce D., Del Rosario Stephanie M., De Leon Joshua Benedict A., Ensha Johanna Kirsten E., and lastly, Espinosa Micaela Erich B.
Let's now proceed with the issues on the use of drugs. So the use of drugs remains a present concern in the Philippines despite recent signs of decline, like the reported case of the dangerous drug sport that current drugs use among Filipinos aged 10 to 69 increased from 2.5% in 2019 to 1.7 in 2023. While it is encouraging that many individuals sought rehabilitation for positive change, in 2024, the DVB reported that 6,554 individuals were admitted to rehabilitation centers, and 40% of the new admissions are ages between 15 and 19, highlighting the vulnerability of adolescents in the use of drugs in such an early age. So these statistics indicate that while overall drug use may be decreasing, teenagers remain at high risk, emphasizing the need for targeted programs and interventions to address these specific needs.
Moving on to the most abused drugs. So we have here first is the alcohol, the most widely used drug globally, significantly impacting global health. For instances, excessive alcohol consumption can lead to a liver disease. Second one is the synthetic catechins, or known as the bath salts. Stimulant substances that pose serious health risks. For example, user may experience severe violent behaviors. For the third one, we have here the cocaine. A powerful stimulant derives from coca leaves. For instances, inhaling cocaine can result to a severe nasal tissue damage. For the fourth one, we have here the inhalants, toxic chemicals from household products inhaled for mild altering effects. For example, lalo na yung mga panlinis sa CR na matatapang yung amoy, binhan doon nagkakos yung, lalo na doon na i-inhale natin yung mga chemicals na nakaka-apekto sa health natin. For the fifth one is the prescription drugs or the cold medicines. Legal medication can be misused or overdosed pag hindi tama yung pag-inom sa prescribe ng medication. For instances, the abuse of cough syrup can cause a impaired cognition. For the sixth one is the steroids. A substances often misused to enhance muscle growth performance. For example, yung prolonged use of cause of mood swings or aggressions ng tao. For the last one is the tobacco or the nicotine. A highly addictive substances found in cigarettes or vapes, or mostly in some vapes. For instances, or for example, is the smoking tobacco greatly increase the risk of lung cancer. So all in all ng substances na ito is common and accessible here especially here in the Philippines, and yung pag-misuse can pose a serious risk for both individual health and public safety.
Now let's move on to the difference between therapeutic and non-therapeutic drugs. Next slide, please. So for the therapeutic drugs, these are the medications that are prescribed and administered under professional medical supervision with the primary purpose of improving health outcomes. So they are utilized to treat health problems, relieve symptoms, manage diseases, and prevent or reduce the risk of future illnesses. In doing so, they contribute to the enhancement of overall health and quality of life. So example nito is antibiotics, which are prescribed to combat bacterial infections, and pain relievers such as paracetamol and ibuprofen, which are used to alleviate discomfort and support recovery. Next is non-therapeutic drugs. So these are substances that are not intended for medical treatment or disease prevention. Instead, they are taken for purposes such as pleasure, relaxation, or mood alteration. So the use of these substances frequently result in negative outcomes, including addiction, unhealthy behaviors, and serious health risks. So example nito is yung cocaine, which is often misused for its stimulant or euphoric effects, and anabolic steroids naman, which are commonly taken without medical necessity to enhance physical performance or appearance. Both examples illustrate the dangers associated with non-therapeutic drug use. So to sum this up lang, therapeutic drugs are directed toward healing and the promotion of health under medical supervision, whereas non-therapeutic drugs naman are used outside of medical supervision for non-medical purposes, often resulting in significant harm.
Moving forward for what are the ethical issues on the use of drugs. So firstly, we have our guide questions to consider when a situation could be ethically challenging. So firstly is moral dilemma. What ethical conflict am I facing and who can support it? Second is patient needs. What is the priority and how can it be addressed, usually pertaining to the patient's well-being and treatment plan? Third is assumptions. Am I making biased assumptions that affect my actions? Fourth is safety versus dignity. How do we balance safety of the patient, staff, and public while preserving dignity? Fifth is personal values. How do my own values show in my language and decisions? Sixth is respect. How can I show respect even if it's not reciprocated? Seventh is moral distress. What resources are available to cope with this emotional burden? In line with those questions, here are the key ethical issues in drugs. These are issues emphasize the complex balance between individual liberties, public health, justice, and professional ethics in the context of drug use. Ethical drug use is mostly discussed in terms of medical use and treatment, while illicit drug use raises significant ethical challenges for individuals and society. So firstly is autonomy versus control. This is the tension between individuals' freedom to use drugs and societal duty to prevent harm. Usual debate for this is that should non-medical drug be used for this decriminalization. So here's the issue when it comes to the patient's needs and the use for medical agendas versus the potential of abuse and different side effects. Second is confidentiality versus public safety. Protection of patient privacy in treatment versus reporting requirements for public health and safety. The issue comes when the balance of the privacy of the patient should also be addressed for public safety. Third is fair treatment and non-discrimination. People with substance use disorders must be treated with dignity and equity. Punitive or biased approaches raises ethical flags. Fourth is harm reduction versus abstinence. The ethical dilemma is that does it require abstinence or adopt harm reduction strategies for people who use drugs? An example of this is self-safe ejection sites and respecting autonomy while ensuring effective care. The issue here is that teaching the patient to actually administer for themselves could also lead to misuse or abuse. The fifth one is professional responsibility. Of course, healthcare workers should also abide in remaining drug-free to practice safely. Obligations to act if a colleague is impaired. And lastly is research ethics. Informed consent, confidentiality, and minimizing harm in studies involving drug users. A balance in advancing knowledges while protecting vulnerable participants must be applied for it to be ethically sound. Next, please. So here are some examples where ethical theories are applied when ethical situations are in place. So firstly is if it supports harm reduction and limited freedom, if it maximizes happiness and reduces harm, it is under utilitarianism. If the views on drug is morally wrong, by rule, justifies strict laws, even if the outcomes are not beneficial and is usually decided by an authority, it is under deontology. And third is if the drug use undermines values like self-control and responsibilities, and if the substance use or the drug hinders the promotion of building character and moral flourishing, it is under virtue ethics.
Okay, so for what impacts ethical evaluation of the drug? So first is safety and efficacy. So a drug must be proven safe for human use and effective for its intended purpose. Without this, giving it to patients would be harmful and unethical. Second is risk-benefit balance. So even effective drugs can have side effects. Ethically, the benefits, such as healing, symptom relief, should outweigh the risks of toxicity and adverse reactions. Third, informed consent. Patients and trials participants must fully understand what the drug does and its possible side effects and alternatives before agreeing to use it. So this respects their autonomy. Fourth, accessibility and equity. Drugs should be available to all who need them, not just the wealthy or those in urban areas. Limited access creates ethical concerns about fairness. Fifth, cost and affordability. So if the drug is priced too high, it becomes inaccessible. Ethical evaluation considers whether pricing prevents patients from receiving necessary treatment. Sixth, cultural and social values. So some drugs may clash with religious or cultural beliefs, such as contraceptives and vaccines. Ethical evaluation includes respecting diversity while balancing public health needs. Seventh, regulatory standards. So drugs must follow strict laws and medical guidelines to protect public safety. Skipping proper approval processes is unethical and dangerous. Lastly, research integrity. Clinical trials must be conducted honestly without data manipulation, exploitation of participants, or hidden risk. Trust in drugs depends on transparent and ethical research. So sa lahat ng mga ethical standards na yan, nag-fail ang illegal drugs.
So now let's move on for the issues related to AIDS. Next slide, please. So AIDS is stands for acquired immunodeficiency syndrome caused by HIV because 'di ba HIV yung pinakaunang stage bago siya mag-progressive sa AIDS. So nangyayari kapag may for example nakapasok siya sa portal of entry na infect tayo ng for example individual na may HIV. So, nakapasok siya sa portal of entry. And ang AIDS kasi is nakukuha siya sa four bodily fluids. So, we have first the blood, we have also the semen, anal mucus, as well as the breast milk. So, yung mga four na body fluids na yun, ito dito sa natatransmit ang sakit na HIV. So, ang ginagawa ng HIV kasi is wini-weaken niya yung ating CD4 cells. So, CD4 cells is siya yung nagsasabi sa katawan natin if we are infected. So, HIV virus na to is ini-infect niya yung CD4 cells, ginagawa niya itong weak, and yung HIV itself nag-replicate. And kapag tumami na yung viral load, and nag-decrease na yung CD4 cells, ang mangyayari doon, maraming opportunistic infections na pwedeng mangyari sa katawan ng patient. Ito na rin yung nagkakos, and nagiging progressive na siya and magtuturn sa AIDS. So, second, we have leads to life-threatening infection and cancer. Kasulad na nasabi ko kanina, dahil nga opportunistic ang sakit na HIV, nagtithreaten siya ng infection. And dahil nga mababa ang ating immune system, madali tayong ma-infect. So we have also social issues like stigma, discrimination, and misinformation. So ngayon, napakarampan pa rin ng stigma, and minsan maraming mga HIV client na nahihiya or nadi-discriminate, as well as maraming kumakalat na misinformation about HIV. So, worsened by poverty, inequality, and limited access to healthcare. So, here in the Philippines, hindi pa masyadong okay yung Like even though marami ng mga drugs, for example, yung PrEP or pre-exposure prophylaxis, marami ng mga drugs na ginagamit to fight HIV, hindi pa rin masyadong equally distributed dahil nga sa limited healthcare access as well as sa um, action ng government. So it also influences by gender disparities and lack of education and cultural barriers, public awareness and equal access to treatment. Next slide, please.
So, what are the various ethical and societal concerns related to HIV or treatment? So, for the ethical and societal concerns in HIV or AIDS treatment, first we have stigma and discrimination, which means rejection and unfair treatment to people living with HIV. Next is access to care or the ability to get timely and affordable services. We also face underfunding, which means kulang tayo sa budget given for HIV programs. And this leads to a financial burden because our families and the health system struggle with lifelong treatment costs. To address these, there should be strong government responsibilities through education, accessible services, and fighting misinformation and gender-based violence. Lastly, community organizations play a key role in prevention, but it's still addressed that we still need more support and funding.
So now let's talk about the treatment and research development of appropriate policies and disease prevention. So antiretroviral viral therapy or ART forms the most important part of HIV management, which is effective in checking viral replication, the restoration of the immune competitiveness, as well as the risk of transmission. The recent studies have been advanced to two long-acting agents, including lenacapavir that prevents viral nuclear entry, and two novel injectable regimens that improve adherence. Pre-exposure prophylaxis, or PrEP, is available to those with high risk such as Truvada, Descovy, Apretude, and Yeztugo, which offer considerable protection when taken under clinical supervision. The Republic Act number 8504, or what we call as the Philippine AIDS Prevention and Control Act of 1998, and the updated Republic Act number 11166, the Philippine HIV and AIDS Policy Act of 2018, support the HIV response in the Philippines and strengthen testing, treatment, and anti-discrimination efforts to counteract the transmission of the virus. Prevention measures against the disease include promotion of condom and sexual health education, harm reduction programs of persons who inject drugs, and preventive programs of mother to child transmission. Together, these interventions combine therapeutic, innovative, policy based, and prevention elements as part of a unified strategy on controlling HIV.
Now, let us talk about the justification of the importance of informed consent in human research, especially in HIV clinical trials. So, informed consent is a cornerstone of ethical research involving human participants. It is especially crucial in HIV clinical trials due to the sensitive nature of the disease, stigma, and the risks involved. So first is the protection of autonomy. So informed consent ensures participants makes voluntary informed choices about joining a study. In HIV trials, where treatments may involve experimental drugs with uncertain outcomes, participants must fully understand potential risks and benefits. Second is the risk-benefit transparency. So HIV clinical trials may involve side effects, drug resistance, or confidentiality risks. Consent ensures participants
are aware of risks, the purpose of the research, and possible alternatives before participation. Third one is um, to respect for vulnerable groups or populations. Many people living with HIV belong to socially vulnerable groups, such as the marginalized communities. So, informed consent protects against exploitation and coercion in recruitment. Fourth is the confidentiality and stigma concerns. Disclosure of HIV status can lead to stigma or discrimination. The consent processes must clearly outline privacy protections and how personal data will be handled. And fifth one is the trust in research and healthcare. Ethical practices build trust between researchers and participants. So, without robust information consent, communities may become reluctant to engage in HIV trials, slowing medical progress. And the last one is ethical and legal standards, or the compliance with international ethical standards. The frameworks, like the Declaration of Helsinki and Belmont Report, emphasize informed consent as essential for ethical research. In HIV research, where trials often span global populations, this standard ensures fair and respectful treatment across diverse contexts. So that is all for our presentation.